Coming up, Cherokee National Treasure Noel Grayson takes us hunting and teaches us some old ways that are still worth practicing today.
But we need to teach this younger generation now, not just to hunt, but the respect of that animal.
Plus, master artist Dorothy Sullivan reminisces about the late Chief Wilma Mankiller and her words of wisdom.
We're girls, we can do it.
And tales of Dragon Canoe's violent resistance to colonization made him an almost mythic figure in Cherokee history. We uncover a little-known speech given by one of our most notorious warriors. And finally, follow Cherokee scholars as they decipher hidden Cherokee writing from nearly 2 centuries ago.
And here's this cave with syllabary, and yet what it's being used for is to do very old things.
The Cherokees.
A thriving American Indian tribe.
Our history.
Our culture.
Our people.
Our future.
The principles of a historic nation.
Sewn into the fabric of a modern world.
Hundreds of thousands strong.
Learning. Growing.
Succeeding.
And steadfast.
In the past, we have persevered through struggle.
But the future is ours to write.
Osiyo.
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 These are the voices of the Cherokee people.
Osiyo, I'm Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. Welcome to Tahlequah, Oklahoma, capital city of the Cherokee Nation. For generations, the Cherokee story has been told by others. Today, through this groundbreaking series, we're taking ownership of our own story and telling it as beautifully and authentically as we can. I hope you enjoy these profiles of our people, our history, and our culture. And please make plans to come visit us sometime. Wado.
Osiyo, it's how we say hello in Cherokee. I'm your host, Jennifer Lauren, at the Cherokee National History Museum. Here you can learn more about stickball, the little brother of war. But sometimes war was inevitable within our tribes. Coming up a little bit later in our Cherokee Almanac, we'll hear the story of Dragon Canoe, Cherokee war chief. But first, Noel Grayson is a culture keeper. His knowledge and hunting skills run deep. Thankfully for us, it's his job to share that knowledge with the rest of the world. And for that, we are grateful.
I don't shoot a bow because I like archery. I started out shooting a bow because I like to eat. I like to hunt. You know, I'm an opportunistic hunter. If I go hunting and go out and say, oh, I see a quail, you know, if that's what he gives me to eat for that day, that's what I'm going to eat, you know. It's an old Cherokee thing, you know, Native American, I guess. My name's Noel Grayson. I'm a bow maker. Okay, I've been making bows since I was a little child, starting out with just a stick and a string. We're at the Cherokee Heritage Center, and we're in Dilligwa right now. Dilligwa is a village, a recreation of a Cherokee village based off of the 1700s, early 1700s, and we try to say 1710, okay? But it's a living history village. We try to get people out here who know what they're doing and know their stuff, you know, to demonstrate and show people this is what we did. I teach flint knapping to the kids, okay? And I'm teaching them in the most basic way that I can because they're children. You only got their attention for a second. So I sit there and say, you can hit it with rock, hit it with another rock, hit it with an antler. The main thing is angles, okay? There's gotta be something there to take off. And when I teach adults, I tell them, don't let it get complicated. You're making a stone tool. All you're doing is carving a rock by flaking it. So if you want to learn how to do it, learn how to flake. Put it right where you want it, and then you hit the antler itself, and you see how that removes a flake. But when I see somebody who has an interest in it, all you got to do is keep that spark going, right? And it's going to build up later. It's a responsibility, you know. I'm a recognized master in doing this stuff, but I still ask people, you know, if I see somebody, I'll ask them, hey, how do you do that? You know, how do you do it? Because it may open up a different avenue, something that I haven't even thought of yet. Scott Ratliff, I learned a lot off him. He was an old Cherokee guy that worked out here, and he told me one time, we were sitting around talking, he was a really interesting man. He told me one time, he said, "You watch what I do." He said, "Because one of these days, you got to do it. You got to be the one who passes it on and teach it." And I just kind of went, okay, okay. I listened to him. I didn't actually know that I would end up out here doing it. Everything's alive around us, no matter what, When I go cut wood, I talk to that tree. People think I'm nutty, maybe because a little bit, but I'll sit there and tell it what I want and what I'm going to do with it, Because I haven't cut wood, bow wood in a long time, simply because we have a younger generation coming up behind us, and I don't want them to sit there and have to struggle to find the wood that it takes. Same way with hunting, you shouldn't overhunt, which is what we did in the 1700s when we started hunting for skins to trade with the Europeans. We almost took the deer population and decimated it back in the Southeast. It's made a comeback, but they were really disrespecting those animals back then. I think we paid a price for it. But respecting animals like that, you took that animal's life, you should use every piece of it, and we were good at that back in the day. Now what I have is sinew, which is a ligament and tendon. Now I've actually stripped this one down. You can let this stuff dry out and it'll peel apart just like thread. We were excellent at using every part of an animal. Apologize to the animal, ask forgiveness, but you also give thanks for it. Now you take that skin, you make a hide out of it, make leather out of it, make clothing out of it to warm yourself. You're gonna use that animal's brain because it has a fine oil in it. You can make tools out of the bones. You're gonna eat the meat. You're gonna take sinew and you can use that to sew with. You can tie arrows on it. You can tie feathers on an arrow with it. Everything with the sinew. You see it nowadays. You see people throwing deers out, back straps missing, the horns cut off, the rest of the deer's laying there. Somebody could have used that meat. Somebody could have ate it. Somebody would have been happy to get it. But we need to teach this younger generation not just to hunt, but the respect of that animal.
Anymore, when I was young, I'd eat a lot. I'd go out hunting, anything, but I'm just not hungry like that anymore. I don't want to take something's life to extend my own. I can look at it for the beauty of it nowadays if I see it out in the woods, mushrooms, anything. I used to think I had to eat everything I seen that was edible.
You shoot a bow like this, there is a way to aim it. My brothers taught me how to aim it. You just look down that arrow, line everything up, right? Line the string up with the arrow. Everything else is about elevation, judging distance. Take that animal quick. You owe it to them, right? You owe that animal the best shot you can give it.
There's one right over there. Far side, you see the fence line? Straight across. Let's see what we can do about educating this little guy. Ooh. I think I dusted his butt a little bit. Leave some dirt on him.
I share knowledge because knowledge, back in the day, we didn't place a value on money, on gold, on silver. We had all that stuff back in the Southeast. It was just too soft of a metal for us to use. But what we did treasure, what was a treasure to us was the knowledge. That knowledge got passed down. Nowadays, we place that value on material needs. But having knowledge like this when I was growing up, that's the kind of knowledge I sought. Somewhere along the line, some little kid's going to say, yeah, he showed me how to do this. I know how to do this because he kept it alive.
Dorothy Sullivan is a master Cherokee artist who has spent the last 30 years painting in honor of her heritage. Dorothy says each painting holds a special place in her heart and has a special meaning.
I really believe that art It's a reflection of ourselves, what we are. And it's not just what you're seeing and what you're looking at, but it's what you're feeling that makes your art work. My name is Dorothy Tidwell Sullivan. I'm a Cherokee master artist. I've spent the last 30 years creating art about the Cherokee history and culture, legends and things, and have enjoyed doing that. I started drawing before I could write. It's just something that I need to do. You know, I was a teacher, and I always loved history and things like that. I'd done cowboy art and landscapes and everything else, but I didn't really feel like I had a purpose with it until I went to the museum at Tahlequah. And I saw the first Trail of Tears art show. I told my husband, I said, well, that's what I have to do from now on. That's what I have to do. And I said, I can honor my father and my family. And I can use my love of history and the culture and everything. So that's what I did for a long time. The memory circle is all the things that we have from our past and what we're doing now and what comes in the future. The more I've researched and tried to learn as much as I could to try to tell the story of it, that gave me a purpose, and I enjoyed it. This was at Red Earth when I was the honored one, and this is me and Wilma. The first Trail of Tears piece I did at the museum show, I met her there. I was so in awe of her, and she became a friend that I just really appreciated. And it helped me to feel like that I could do something, make a contribution or something. Years later, I did a painting called She Speaks for Her Clan. And I asked Wilma if she would be the honored woman in the picture. And she said yes, and I was pretty thrilled. She just made me feel, okay, you can do whatever. And we're girls, we can do it. And so she was just wonderful to me. It's the purpose for our women to get the balance. Not to rule the men, but to be the balance. And the balance is coming back. And that's one of my painting that I'm going to work on next. She's going to be this one, the wolf and the war woman. Dorothy Ice is going to be the paint clan. When I was thinking of doing this painting, it was because we needed the balance, and it finally hit me what it was. So I'm doing it. And then I'm all excited. Now I'm ready to just keep painting every day, and I'm gonna.
Perhaps the most celebrated Cherokee war chief of all time is Dragging Canoe. His leadership of the Chickamauga Warriors fill the pages of countless histories. In this Cherokee Almanac, we learn about a prophetic speech given by Dragging Canoe, illustrating the difficult decisions our tribal leaders once faced. In March of 1775, over 1,000 Cherokee people met in Sycamore Shoals at an event that would come to be known as the Henderson Purchase. Colonial land speculators were meeting with Cherokee leaders in an attempt to purchase nearly 20 million acres of Cherokee hunting grounds.
Deerskin trade was in decline by the mid to late 18th century, and Cherokee people are attempting to figure out what their economy will look like moving forward.
When it seemed inevitable that Cherokee leaders would accept the terms set before them, a voice of opposition stepped forward. He was a muscular individual standing 6 feet tall. This was Dragging Canoe, a respected warrior and the leader of the great island town.
Dragging Canoe was a very fierce and passionate Cherokee man. When he was very young, he caught smallpox, but he survived. But for the rest of his life, his face was scarred from the disease.
Dragging Canoe did not mince words as he addressed the negotiators. Dragging Canoe berated the land speculators for attempting to purchase lands that white colonists had been illegally squatting on for years. He predicted that once they finally obtained these lands, the same encroaching spirit would lead them to other lands of the Cherokee. He said new cessions would be applied for, and the country which the Cherokees and our forefathers had so long occupied would be called for, until a remnant of Cherokees, a nation that had once been so great and formidable, would have to seek retreat in some far distant wilderness. Dragging Canoe asserted that the colonial lust for land would never end, that Cherokees would again behold the advancing banners of the same greedy host, who, not being able to point out any further retreat, would then proclaim the extinction of the whole race. Cherokee youth listened intently to Dragging Canoe's words, and the land speculators began to sweat. He continued, "Should we not therefore run all risks and incur all consequences, rather than to submit to further laceration of our country? Such treaties may be all right for men who are too old to hunt or fight. As for me, I have my young warriors about me."
The Henderson Purchase comes at a time when colonies are in upheaval as well, because it's on the eve of the American Revolution.
When the Revolutionary War broke out in 1776, Cherokee leaders remained loyal to the British Crown.
The Carolinas more generally, and Virginia at the outbreak of the American Revolution, pretty swiftly move all of their forces against Cherokees, wholesale burn towns.
While the majority of Cherokee leaders demanded peace, Dragging Canoe assembled a sizable following of like-minded leaders and warriors.
This new batch of people that are coming together to stage a resistance are doing so along the Chickamauga River. And so as a result of both that kind of regional and geographic association, people came to call this group the Chickamauga Warriors.
They fought all over because he didn't believe the settlers would not stop, that they would just keep coming and keep coming. So he wanted to take a stand then.
And so Dragging Canoe did commit acts that were violent. It's a violent moment of resistance, of encroachment, and Dragging Canoe is wrapped up in much of that.
In late February of 1792, Dragging Canoe forged an alliance with Creek and Choctaw forces, and a grand celebration was held.
So they were celebrating, he was celebrating, and then when dawn came, after they had all danced all night, he died.
Dragging Canoe's uncompromising spirit continued through the warriors who fought under his leadership.
Let's talk Cherokee. I am coloring. I am coloring. Two of us are coloring. Two of us are coloring. A group of us are coloring.
Dorjisu-wiska.
A group of us are coloring.
Dorjisu-wiska.
Nestled deep within Lookout Mountain near Fort Payne, Alabama, Manitou Cave holds stories from our Cherokee ancestors. We had the distinct honor of traveling deep into the cave as researchers continue to try and decipher the historic Cherokee syllabary within.
In traditional Cherokee cosmology, there are three planes of existence. First, the world above, a domain of pure tranquility. Suspended below that is the land that you and I inhabit, a world constantly in flux, struggling for a balance between the peace found above and the unease that comes from the world beneath us. Cherokee people's ancestral homelands in southern Appalachia are host to a vast network of underground tunnels and aquifers. Some Cherokees believe the natural springs and caves that cover the landscape serve as portals to the world below, a home to powerful entities, a place Cherokees would not likely venture into without purpose.
We are in a place called Manitou Cave. It's about 1.5 miles, 2 miles from Fort Payne, Alabama.
Bo Carroll is a tribal citizen and lead archaeologist for the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indians Tribal Historic Preservation Office. Bo's work in Manitou Cave has provided essential context for one of the most pivotal moments in Cherokee history, the implementation of Sequoyah's writing system, the Cherokee syllabary. Manitou Cave is near present-day Fort Payne, Alabama, formerly known as Willstown.
Willstown becomes this intellectual center, so to speak. Sequoyah relocates there, for instance, and we know that he's kind of been working on the syllabary for a period of time. First thing Sequoyah does when he invents the syllabary or finally has a working system is he gives it away. He gives it to Cherokee people, and including his children.
Through his research, Bo believes that one of Sequoyah's children was a frequent visitor to the cave.
I had a feeling that they said Richard Guess. Found a document, it's an old removal record. It had his signature. So I matched it with this and it looks exactly the same. Yeah. And then I looked in the roll books and at Sequoyah's children, and he had a son named Richard. So I had a pretty good idea that's who that was that wrote that. Richard Guess. Signed his English name. People just wanted to write because they knew how, and they were writing in their own language.
Nearly 2 centuries later, Cherokee historians can only speculate on the meaning behind some of the messages left within the cave.
Even though we can maybe translate what's there, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're reading in the ways that our ancestors would have.
It's wrote backwards again, like if you were to hold it up to a mirror, which I found interesting.
Even today, this cave holds significant meaning for both our ancestors who wrote on the walls and for the Cherokee academics working to decipher its meaning.
So going into a caves was both something that Cherokee people did, but also something Cherokee people took seriously because it's also a doorway, a gateway to other realms. And so it wasn't necessarily that caves were bad, it was just that caves were powerful spaces. And so you need to tread lightly and think deeply about your engagement with powerful spaces and powerful beings.
The adoption of the syllabary was not the only cultural shift happening in Willstown in the 1820s.
We also have to be very practical, I think, in our thinking about why caves, right? That there are lots of pressures on Cherokee people to civilize during this moment.
Part of the civilization policy was to be a good Christian and give up everything that made you a traditional Cherokee. So you have these missionaries, churches moving in. They looked at anything related to traditional Cherokee practices as the devil's work or heathenish. I think it drove a lot of stuff underground that might not normally have to be hidden.
They're not only continuing a long tradition, continuing what they've always done, continuing to carry out the ceremonies, but also doing it in close proximity to missionaries, right in their backyards, so to speak. And there's a resistance there.
In the deepest reaches of the cave, there is an open cavern, ideal for ceremonies associated with the game of stickball.
Ani Yanli, leaders are the ones who lead. Tikwana Itzo. Tikwana Itzo is an older term for stickball. The stickball team, Guo na Kanlan, that's one of the ones that had trouble translating.
The writing, translated into English, becomes the ones who lead the stickball team in their month, April, the 30th day, 1828.
You go through the ceremonies that you have to go through. Water's involved. So I think they would take them to the water down there, and then they'd come up here and wrote about the stickball game they're getting ready to play. They played it to practice. It's good for hand-to-hand combat practice. Comparable to actual war, not a lot of people died.
And at the same time, it had a ceremonial side, so it wasn't just some piece of entertainment.
It's essentially the same thing as you're doing before you go to war. You're preparing to take a life or have your life taken.
Elsewhere in the cave, a small etching of syllabary tells of a possible outcome to the documented stickball game. Mr. R.G., we who are those that have blood come out of their nose and mouth, I am a man of authority, Richard Guess. This etching, written in both Cherokee and English, lends credence to Bo's theory that Richard Guess was one of Sequoia's children.
The language itself, that we had our noses bloodied, right? That there's also a need when stickball games to get carried out, that anytime blood is spilled, ceremonies have to be conducted in order to make sure that balance is restored. Blood, much like caves, is a powerful substance.
These long-standing ideals were not cast aside. They were held close to the heart, even while being plunged into darkness.
And here's this cave with syllabary, which is new, which is a change. And yet what it's being used for is to do very old things, to talk about and record old ceremonies, things that connected Cherokee people to the past, but using a technology that's going to move Cherokee people to the future.
They're trying to hold on to what makes them Cherokee. And they were successful as far as I'm concerned, because we can still come in here and read this. I can still hear people talking Cherokee. I can still go to a ceremony. That culture's still alive.
Hurrah. We hope you enjoyed our show. And remember, you can always watch entire episodes and share your favorite stories online at Osiyo.tv. There is no Cherokee word for goodbye, because we know we'll see you again. We say, Dodadago ha'i. Wado.